And when I looked at my own project that I was proposing to put forward, I thought, but my project is culturally relevant. I'm telling the story of my own family, and I'm telling the story of individuals and Barbadian families. People are an important part of culture. Family traditions, family stories are an important part of our culture. And I'm attempting to preserve that via my documentary filming. So with that in mind, I said, you know what, my project is relevant and I think I should submit, because if this is being pitched during the season of Emancipation and this is all part of culture, well, I don't know what the others are pitching, but at least if only but for that, culturally relevant, well, let me submit. So said, so done. And as I thought about it more, I want to say firstly, thank you to the government of Barbados, the Ministry of Culture, for facilitating this Marcus Garvey pitch competition. By organizing this competition, the ministry has acknowledged we need to empower our people to start culturally relevant entrepreneurial businesses. And if you're going to empower them, we need to allow them access to grant funding. And this essentially was what the top prizes have been, grant funding.
The importance of the documentation and preservation of our cultural heritage is central for the transfer of information to future generations. This provides them with the foundation to truly understand and appreciate who they are. Documentary producer Carseen Greenidge is a prize winner of the competition. He spoke of his love for capturing information for future generations.
What that simply means is I'm into the practice of capturing the stories today via audiovisual formats for access tomorrow by future generations who may not have been around at the time that the content, but that content could be in video, could be in photos. They may not have been around at the time that I captured the content, but the story must be told and should be told of our present for access and reference by our future. So I love engaging with people. I love asking questions, because by asking questions, that's how I find out. I observe. My specific interest in, well, one of my specific interests in documentary filming is linked to family history research. I've developed over the last few years a deep interest in my own family's existence in Barbados and how I came to be as a Greenidge with roots in Barbados. I knew very little about my Bajan ancestry. And there was an occasion in 2018 where my Greenidge family had a family reunion. And that family reunion did it. That influenced me to begin the research into my own Greenidge family. Because as I was chatting with my other relatives, Guyanese, and as conversations about my grandfather came up, I never truly had any meaningful interactions with my grandfather. He was a Barbadian who migrated to Guyana in the early 1920s. He was about 24, 25, and he was a laborer. And he migrated to Guyana. He found a Guyanese wife, had all his children over here. He never returned to Barbados. Over the years, as a child, I kept hearing these conversations. And as a young boy, I wasn't really paying any attention. Well, he's my grandfather, he's dead now. I mean, what's the big deal? But as I became older and my interest in social history intensified, I then became even more curious about my heritage, my ancestry, and this man about whom my relatives often speak. And as I began to ask questions, but there's always a point in the conversations beyond which I can't go because the information is not there. The family has not gathered the, because remember we're Guyanese, not knowing much about our grandfather, my father's father, who was Barbadian, and when he left Barbados, he left all his Greenidge family in Barbados. So he died in Guyana. He never really told much stories about the Barbadian experience. So the family that he created in Guyana is now left to really discover on their own who are our relatives that grandfather left. And my father and his brothers, when they migrated, they made an attempt to discover who grandfather's brothers and other Greenidge relatives, but they found it a bit challenging and they weren't getting anywhere. And in the early 1990s, they just stopped. To my disadvantage, because then I am lacking of that knowledge about my past. And there wasn't anybody else in the family who became as curious and as inquisitive as I became about my grandfather. So in 2018, these conversations were having an conversation about, because the family reunion of Guyanese, my Greenidge family, who came over from Guyana, some are living in the US, some are living in Canada, we decided, you know what, linking with each other is important. And to facilitate this physical linking, let's have a family reunion. And that decision was made. So we thought about where are we going to meet? Should we meet in Guyana? Should we meet in the US? Should we meet in Canada? Should we meet in Barbados? But we thought, you know, how fitting it would be to meet in our grandfather's, my father's father, in his birthland. Because this is where it all started. It was because of grandfather that we all came to be. So the decision to have that family reunion in 2018 became a reality. And for me, as I look back, that was a significant defining moment in my search and discovery for my grandfather and the relatives that he left. And I said to myself, you know what? There is some information that's missing. Somebody needs to go out and start searching. And I took that responsibility on myself. It will start with me because I am sufficiently curious. And so it did. And coincidentally, around that time, after the family reunion ended, the BTMI, in collaboration with the Barbados Archives Department, had launched what continues today as a genealogy marketplace. So the family, and then advertisement in the media occurred, genealogy marketplace, come and search for your family history. And I did. And I have never left the Archives Department since then. So the Archives Department played an important role in getting me to where I am today with the knowledge about my grandfather. And I will say this before I pause, is because of the information and the assistance that I got at the Archives Department, I today, unlike in 2018, I knew only of, well, the family knew only of one sibling, a likely second of grandfather. His name was Edward Greenidge. My grandfather's name was Edward Greenidge. The family could have identified one sibling quite clearly, the elder of the siblings, Christopher Greenidge, Christopher McLennan Greenidge. He was the eldest of the children. But there were others, and they were unable to identify them by name. This is 2023. I'm happy to report that as a result of my research, as a result of my questioning, my probing, my going out and looking, physically looking, you are my blood relative. I'm pleased to meet you. I am happy to report, Rasheed, that today I have names placed against persons who are my grandfather's siblings. That for me is success, because I came from a position of ignorance to know today a position of knowledge.